Alvin York grew up in a place called Pall Mall, Tennessee. It was way up in the Cumberland Mountains. This wasn't an easy life. The land was rugged. The winters were cold and harsh. Summers were hot and full of hard work. His family lived in a log cabin. There were 12 children in total, but one died young. Alvin was the third oldest. His parents worked hard just to put food on the table. They were subsistence farmers. This meant they grew most of what they ate. They raised hogs and cattle. They had a small garden. Money was always scarce. Alvin started helping out early. He hunted for food. He learned how to shoot a gun better than almost anyone. He practiced with his rifle. He could hit small targets from far away. He learned to track game in the woods. This wasn't just a hobby. It was survival. If he didn't bring home supper, the family might go hungry. He became an expert marksman out of necessity, but Alvin wasn't always a pious man. When he was a young adult, he had a wild streak. He drank a lot of moonshine. He spent his money gambling. He got into bar fights. He was known for being hot-headed and quick to anger. His father, William York, died in 1911. Alvin was 23 then. His father's death hit him hard. It made him think about his life. He saw his mother's faith. He saw his community's struggles. He felt like he was on the wrong path. Then, a few years later, something big happened. There was a revival meeting in his community. It was a powerful experience for Alvin. He decided to turn his life around. He joined the Church of Christ and Christian Union. This was a small, conservative denomination. They believed in a literal interpretation of the Bible, and a very important part of their faith was pacifism. They taught that Christians should not fight or kill. They should love their enemies. Alvin took this teaching very seriously. His conversion was real. He stopped drinking, stopped gambling, stopped fighting. He became a devout man. He started teaching Sunday school. He led the singing in church. He even became an elder. He was committed to living a peaceful, righteous life according to his new faith. He wanted to be a good example. He truly believed in the power of non-violence. Then came the Great War. World War I. It was raging in Europe. America joined in April 1917. The government needed soldiers. They started the draft. Alvin York was 29 years old. He was a strong man, fit for service. He received his draft notice. This was a nightmare for him. He had just found peace. Now, his country wanted him to fight. Alvin didn't want to go. His conscience wouldn't let him. He filled out his draft card, where it asked if he was a conscientious objector. He checked the box. He wrote a note explaining his beliefs. He said he was a member of the Church of Christ in Christian Union. He quoted from the Bible. "I am a conscientious objector and do not believe in war," he wrote. He believed it was wrong to kill. He couldn't go against God's word. But the government didn't see it his way. His church wasn't one of the historic peace churches. These were groups like the Quakers or Mennonites who had long traditions of pacifism. The draft board didn't recognize his specific church as grounds for exemption. His appeals were denied. He was told he had to report for duty. He had to become a soldier. Alvin was deeply troubled. He prayed constantly. He talked to his pastor, Pastor Rosier Pyle. His pastor advised him. He told Alvin that maybe God had a purpose for him even in the army. Maybe God wanted him to serve in a different way. Maybe God would protect him. This didn't make the decision easy, but it gave Alvin something to hold on to. He carried his Bible. He went to camp. He was still trying to figure out how to be a Christian and a soldier at the same time. He was a man of peace forced into a war. He felt completely out of place. But he went. He reported for training, his heart heavy with conflict. He didn't know what lay ahead, only that he hoped God was with him. And Alvin York reported to Camp Gordon, Georgia. It was a big change from the quiet mountains of Tennessee. There were thousands of men there. It was loud, it was busy, everything was new and confusing. He was put into the 82nd Infantry Division. They called it the All-American Division. He was assigned to Company G, 328th Infantry Regiment. From the start, Alvin had problems. He wasn't just another recruit. He was a conscientious objector at heart. He didn't want to learn how to kill. He didn't want to use a rifle against another man. He refused to hold a rifle at first. He kept telling his officers about his faith. He told them he couldn't fight. His company commander, Captain Danforth, and his battalion commander, Major George Edward Buxton, saw something special in York. They saw he was sincere. They didn't think he was a coward. They thought he was a good man with a deep conviction. They spent hours talking to him. They tried to persuade him. They used the Bible. They showed him verses. They pointed out that sometimes a just war was necessary. They talked about the duty to protect his country. They talked about fighting evil. Alvin was smart. He could read the Bible, he understood their arguments, but his faith was strong. He continued to struggle. He spent a lot of time alone praying and reading his Bible. He asked God for guidance. He needed a sign. He needed to know what God wanted him to do. He went on a 3-day fast once. He went into the woods. He prayed and thought the whole time. He came back still unsure. Eventually, something shifted. He wasn't fully convinced that he should abandon his pacifist beliefs. But he began to accept that he was in the army. He accepted that he had a duty. He decided he would do his best. He would serve his country. He would trust God to show him the way. He would try to be a good soldier. But he would still hold on to his faith. He would still pray that he wouldn't have to kill. Once he committed, he trained hard. He was a natural soldier. All those years hunting in the mountains paid off. He was an excellent shot. He could outshoot almost everyone. He was strong. He was disciplined. He learned quickly. He became one of the best soldiers in his company. His quiet strength and skill earned him respect. His fellow soldiers admired him. They saw his sincerity. In April 1918, the 82nd Division went overseas. They boarded a ship. They sailed across the Atlantic. It was a long journey. They landed in France. The war was still raging. It was a terrible war. Trench warfare, machine guns, gas attacks. It was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Alvin saw the devastation. He saw the wounded. He saw the dead. He heard the constant roar of the artillery. It was a very different world from his quiet home. He was still a private then. He did what he was told. He dug trenches. He stood guard. He carried supplies. He learned the harsh reality of war. The division spent some time in reserve. Then they moved to the front lines. Alvin and his company were sent to the Marbachi sector. It was a relatively quiet area at first. This was a chance for them to get used to the conditions, to get used to being under fire, to learn how to move safely. Alvin continued to pray. He still held onto the hope that he wouldn't have to take a life. He thought maybe he could just do his duty without killing. But the war was escalating. The Allies were pushing back. They called it the Meuse-Argonne Offensive. It was one of the biggest and bloodiest battles of the war. The goal was to break the German lines, to push them out of France, to end the war. Alvin's division was going to be part of it. He knew his true test was coming. He knew he might not be able to avoid combat. He had wrestled with his conscience for months. He had tried to be exempted. He had talked to his officers. He had prayed. He had studied his Bible. He had come to a kind of peace. He would do his duty. He would fight if he had to. But he would do it with God's help. He would rely on his faith. He would trust that God had put him there for a reason. He was no longer just a simple farmer from Tennessee. He was a soldier. He was a corporal now. And he was about to face the ultimate test of his faith and his skill. The big push was coming. The sounds of distant gunfire grew louder every day. He felt ready, but also very afraid of what he might have to do. It was October 8th, 1918. The Meuse-Argonne offensive was in full swing. Corporal Alvin York and his company, G Company, were deep in the Argonne forest. It was early morning. The forest was thick. The terrain was rough. Visibility was poor. The air was cold and damp. Their mission was to take a German-held railroad line. This line was important. It was a supply route, but things went wrong almost immediately. The Americans faced heavy German resistance. The Germans had machine guns, lots of them. Now they were dug in on a ridge. They had a clear field of fire. G Company was getting hammered. Men were falling all around. They couldn't move forward. They were pinned down. Alvin York was part of a small group, 17 men in total, including their platoon sergeant. Their job was to get around the German flank. They needed to silence those machine guns. They moved quietly through a deep ravine. The ravine offered some cover. They crept along, trying to avoid detection. Then they stumbled right into a large group of Germans. The Germans were setting up a command post. They didn't expect the Americans there. It was a surprise for both sides. The Germans dropped their rifles. They put up their hands. About 15 or 20 Germans surrendered right away. Alvin and his small group now had prisoners. But a problem arose. High up on the ridge, other German machine gunners saw what was happening. They saw their comrades surrendering. They started firing. They unleashed a torrent of bullets. The bullets came from 3 different machine gun nests. They rained down on Alvin's group. They hit the prisoners. They hit the American soldiers. 6 of Alvin's group were hit almost instantly. 3 were killed. 3 were wounded. The platoon sergeant was one of the wounded. He was hit in the leg. He ordered Alvin to take charge. Alvin was the next ranking non-commissioned officer. Alvin was in a terrible spot. His men were exposed. The machine guns were still firing. The Germans were high above. They were picking off his men. Alvin felt a rush of adrenaline. He remembered his faith, he remembered his training, he knew he had to act. He took cover behind a small tree. It wasn't much. He watched the muzzle flashes of the German machine guns. He had to hit them. He had to make them stop. He was a crack shot. He had hunted squirrels in the mountains since he was a boy. This was different. This was war. But the principle was the same. Aim carefully. Shoot straight. Alvin started firing his M1917 Enfield rifle. He aimed for the machine gunner. He didn't waste a single shot. Each time a muzzle flashed, he aimed for that spot. He picked off the Germans one by one. He took them down. He was incredibly accurate. The German fire started to lessen. The machine gunners were being silenced. Then, about 6 Germans rushed him. They jumped out of their trenches. They charged him with bayonets fixed. Alvin didn't panic. He pulled out his M19 pistol. He stood his ground. He fired his pistol. He shot them all. He used the pistol because they were close. He shot the last German who was still charging. It was a desperate fight. He then saw a German major. This major was in charge of the Germans who had first surrendered. The major was hidden behind a tree. He was yelling orders in German. He was trying to get his men to fight back. He was throwing grenades at Alvin. Alvin shot him. The major fell. The remaining Germans were terrified. They had never seen anything like it. One American soldier, almost single-handedly, was taking out their machine gun nests. He was taking out their charging soldiers. He was taking out their commander. They saw his skill. They saw his determination. The major, before he died, had yelled in English, "If you don't stop firing, I will make the rest of them charge you." But Alvin didn't stop. He kept going. When the major fell, the remaining Germans had had enough. The German officer who took command after the major was hit approached Alvin. He spoke in English. "If you will stop firing, we will surrender." Alvin paused. He looked at the scene. His few remaining men were still alive. The machine gun fire had stopped. He had single-handedly eliminated the threat. He had killed about 20 Germans himself. He had silenced the machine guns. He accepted their surrender. He had captured the remaining machine gun crew. He had captured the command post. He had done what seemed impossible. He had taken 132 German prisoners. He marched them all back to the American lines. One man, one rifle, one pistol. He had become a force of nature. He had faced his deepest fear, taking human lives, but he had done it to save his comrades. He had truly fought, and he had won. Alvin York stood there. He had 132 Germans marching in front of him. He was the only uninjured American leading them. His small patrol had started with 17 men. Now, there were only 8 of them, including himself, who were not dead or wounded. He had gathered up the rifles of his fallen comrades and given them to his prisoners to carry. They marched out of the ravine. It was a strange sight. One American soldier, a corporal, marching a huge line of German soldiers. They were officers and men. They were from different units. All of them were now his captives. He led them through the thick Argonne forest. He kept them moving. He had to stay alert. He didn't know if there were more Germans around. As they marched, they ran into more German soldiers. These Germans saw the large column of prisoners. They didn't know what was happening. They tried to set up another machine gun to stop them, but Alvin wasn't having it. He ordered some of his captured German officers to tell their men to surrender. He made it clear he would not hesitate to shoot. The German officers gave the orders, more Germans surrendered. Alvin added them to his growing column of prisoners. He kept marching them back towards the American lines. The journey was long. It was tiring. He hadn't stopped since the early morning. He finally reached the command post of his battalion. Major Buxton, his commanding officer, was there. The major saw this incredible sight. He saw Corporal York, a simple mountain man, bringing in 132 prisoners. He was stunned. "York, have you captured the whole German army?" Major Buxton reportedly asked. Alvin, ever humble, just said, "No, sir. I just got 132. The major couldn't believe it. He asked York to tell him what happened. York, in his quiet, straightforward way, explained everything. He talked about the machine guns. He talked about the charge. He talked about how he had shot them. He talked about how he just did what he had to do. He didn't boast. He didn't exaggerate. He just told the facts. Word spread quickly through the American lines. A single soldier had captured 132 Germans. It was an unbelievable feat. It boosted morale. It gave hope. The men were tired. They were fighting a brutal war. This story was exactly what they needed. It showed that individual bravery could make a huge difference. Alvin didn't see himself as a hero. He saw himself as someone who had done his duty. He had prayed for guidance. He believed God had been with him. He believed God had guided his hand. He had overcome his own moral objections to killing. He had used his hunting skills he had learned to put food on the table, to save his comrades' lives. He had survived. His immediate superiors recognized his bravery. They put him in for awards. He was recommended for the Medal of Honor. This is the highest military award in the United States. It is given for extreme valor. Alvin was promoted to sergeant. He was no longer a corporal. This was a significant promotion. He was given a leave. He was allowed to rest, but he still carried the weight of what he had done. He had killed men. He had done something that went against his deepest religious beliefs. But he also knew he had saved lives. He had protected his fellow soldiers. He wrote about it in his diary. He wrote about the conflict he felt. He had always believed in "thou shalt not kill." But on that day, he had killed many. He felt that God had used him. He felt that God had given him the strength and the accuracy. He felt it was a miracle. He had gone into the war with a heavy heart, unwilling to kill. He came out of this battle a killer, but also a savior in the eyes of his comrades. His story was shared among the troops. It was a story of incredible courage. It was a story of a simple man doing an extraordinary thing. He became known. He became a legend even before the war was over. His name, Sergeant Alvin C. York, started to be whispered with awe and respect. He was the kind of soldier everyone wished they had on their side. He showed what one person could do. He showed true American grit. He showed quiet, humble bravery. He was a hero, whether he wanted the title or not. The war ended a month after Alvin York's famous action. November 11th, 1918, he received his Medal of Honor. General John J. Pershing, the commander of the American Expeditionary Forces, personally presented it to him. He was also awarded France's highest military honor, the Croix de Guerre. He was celebrated as one of the greatest heroes of the war. But Alvin York didn't want the spotlight. He just wanted to go home. He wanted to go back to his quiet life in the Tennessee mountains. He wanted to marry his sweetheart, Gracie Williams. He had promised her he would return. And he did. He came home to a hero's welcome. Everyone wanted to meet him. Newspaper reporters came from all over. They wanted his story. They wanted to make movies about him. They wanted him to endorse products. They offered him a lot of money. They wanted him to tour the country, to speak about his bravery, to tell his story. Alvin said no to almost everything. He turned down thousands of dollars. He didn't want to get rich from the war. He didn't want to profit from killing. He didn't want to be a celebrity. He just wanted to be Alvin York, the farmer. He went back to Pall Mall. He married Gracie on June 7th, 1919. The governor of Tennessee was at their wedding. His home county was poor. The schools were not good. The roads were bad. Alvin saw a need. He decided to use his fame for something good. He didn't want personal gain. He wanted to help his community. He started the Alvin C. York Foundation. Its goal was to improve education in his area. He worked tirelessly to raise money. He accepted some speaking engagements, but only if the money went to his foundation. He pushed for better schools. He even helped start a vocational school, the Alvin C. York Agricultural Institute, in 1926. This school taught mountain kids useful trades. It gave them a chance for a better future. He often walked the halls of the school himself, talking to students. He farmed his land. He had a family. He had 10 children. He lived a simple life. He was still a devout Christian. He was still an elder in his church. He never stopped wrestling with the events of October 8th, 1918. He believed God had worked through him. He believed he had done what was necessary. But the act of killing always stayed with him. Years later, in 1941, Hollywood did make a movie about his life. It was called Sergeant York. Gary Cooper played Alvin. Alvin finally agreed to it. He only did it because the money would help his school. He also wanted to show people that a simple country boy could do big things. He wanted to show that faith could guide you. The movie was a huge success. It won 2 Academy Awards. Gary Cooper won for Best Actor. The movie further cemented Alvin York's place in history. It showed his story to millions of people. When World War II started, Alvin, then in his 50s, tried to re-enlist. He wanted to serve again. He was too old for combat, but he was made a colonel in the Tennessee State Guard. He helped train new recruits. He was a symbol of courage and duty for a new generation of soldiers. Alvin York died in 1964. He was 76 years old. He lived a long life. He saw his community improve. He saw his school thrive. He remained humble until the end. He was always just Sergeant York to everyone. Not a celebrity, not a rich man, just a good man who did what he believed was right. His story is a remarkable one. It's about a man caught between his faith and his duty. It's about how extraordinary courage can come from unexpected places. It's about a simple hunter who became one of America's greatest military heroes. He wasn't looking for fame, he didn't want glory, he just wanted to go home. But his actions on that day in the Argonne Forest capturing 132 Germans made him a true American legend. He proved that quiet strength, deep conviction, and incredible skill could change the course of a battle. And in doing so, he became a symbol of what one person can do. He is remembered as one of the most unlikely yet most effective heroes of the Great War.